Hello, this is the podcast host version of George checking in one last time for the Patreon bonus intro. If you're hearing this, it's because Best Little Horror House in Philly has ended, and I'm releasing the Patreon bonus episodes into the wild. These episodes only exist thanks to the very generous support of some listeners over the years, and I encourage you all to consider supporting an independent podcast this way, or independent art in general. As I mentioned, these episodes are coming from all over the podcast timeline. You'll hear the old intro sometimes, which is kind of a yardstick, but generally I am mentioning this because it means that they will have varying levels of audio quality. As I got better at hosting, so too did the technical aspects. While I certainly wish all the episodes were of the same standard that it reached near the end, I can't go back in time, and I felt it was better to release them this way than not at all, so I hope you enjoy.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh. I'm getting ready to watch a video.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Hi everybody, I'm George, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Best Little Horror House in Philly, the show where ordinarily we talk about the best horror movie ever made. But today, friend of the show, Kron Howard, is back to spotlight the highly influential Carpenter flick that made his initial splash on the global stage. Assault on Precinct 13. Welcome back, Kron.
Oh, thank you, George. Incredibly excited to be here. I love this movie so much, so just happy to get to talk about it for who knows how long.
Hell yeah. I'm very excited about this as well. Carpenter has obviously come up on the main feed of the podcast quite a bit. He is, of course, one of our most iconic horror directors. This is, I would say, still a horror movie, but I think it also kind of rides the line in terms of, like, people might be less comfortable putting it forward as a choice. So I'm excited that we are getting to talk about it somewhere, and I think that getting to sort of dive into it a little more honestly, because it's a spotlight, and we don't have the best horror movie ever made hanging above our heads, although you're certainly welcome to say that if that's how you feel. But yeah, I really like this movie. I think it's really fascinating to see where Carpenter came from and how sort of fully formed he is in this initial, I don't want to say solo output because it's not, obviously it's a team effort, but, you know, compared to the partnership that he had on Dark Star, this is sort of his first John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. Do you remember how you came to it? Was it just Carpenter being who he is and you were going through his filmography, or was there something that drew you to it?
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely one that I got too late, right? Like, so I knocked off all the big ones first. Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, like The Fog, kind of like that entire run that he had with Deborah Hill, and then even picked up a lot of his later stuff, right? So Prince of Darkness and Vampires, stuff like that.
Sure. For the listener, big Prince of Darkness poster right behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love to have an Assault on Precinct 13 one, but they're incredibly more expensive to get your hands on than Prince of Darkness. But I do feel like a lot of people skip this one in a way. Like, Halloween is such a entry point for Carpenter. Like, and I feel like people start there and move forward, even into the territory of you should maybe stop watching Carpenter movies. Like you have diminishing returns the further you go into his filmography.
Right.
But I do think it's extremely rewarding to at least, I mean, even Dark Star has its moments, but Assault is like such a, like, coming onto the scene, making a name for yourself, establishing this is who I am as a director and here's what I can do. So this is one that I kind of came to later in the filmography, but it's probably the one that I honestly go back to the most for rewatches.
Yeah, I found it incredibly easy to rewatch as I was doing research for this. I mean, there's 2 commentary tracks on the disc. I watched both of them, plus the notes watch, and I still was like considering throwing it on one more time before the show. Yep. So it really is the kind of thing that you can really just mellow out to, throw on and pick up new details about the very physical performances that reward that kind of watching.
Yep. I got a chance, I think like late last year, to go see this in a theater. And it was kind of, I mean, it was that experience where when we got to the end of the movie, I felt like I had sat down 15 minutes ago.
Right.
I was just so, I mean, I've seen it probably, 20, 30 times, and I was still just engrossed in the film.
Yeah, it's really great. There's a quote that I found that I think is a good entryway to our discussion. In the November 1996 issue of SFX magazine, Carpenter said, "In France, I'm an auteur. In England, I'm a horror movie director. In Germany, I'm a filmmaker. In the US, I'm a bum. Great quote. Dude has always had a way with words. But that definitely does embody the path that this movie took. When it finally released, this movie kind of didn't do anything here in the US until the rebound of the BFI liking it, and it played well at the London Film Festival. And it sort of helped to launch John's career to the point that John actually named Michael Myers after Precinct 13's English distributor. And then from there, it continued on to Germany and actually became one of their highest grossing movies of the year before returning to the US and making some headway on the exploitation circuit.
What is it, like 76? Didn't this play at Cannes as well? And I think it's so crazy that this played there to begin with. I feel like if you think about what gets play at Cannes now, it is not genre pictures.
I'm pretty sure the new Indiana Jones just played there, so...
Call me a liar, I suppose. But I think there's some story even where, like, Romero was at the Cannes screening, and he was like, when they kill Kathy in the movie, he was just like, damn, this dude is, like, doing what I'm doing, but... to 100% more. Like he's willing to push the envelope even further than what they could literally just 5 years ago.
Yeah, I thought that is really interesting just from the perspective of having to stir conversation, right? I mean, this is what provocation is all about. One of the commentaries was from frequent Carp collaborator Tommy Lee Wallace, who was art director and sound effects man on this movie. And he talked about John not really being in denial about what the kind of movie they were making were. He said, it's an exploitation picture. That's sort of the assignment when you've got pennies and yet you want to make a movie that people are going to want to watch. And so, yeah, someone who's trying to break out, definitely I think the killing of Kathy is a huge way to do that. Even today, people talk about it being fucking crazy. And they're right.
Yeah, for a movie to show that, I mean, even at the time for a genre picture, I feel like was, a step forward from where things had been. And I believe, when they submitted this to the MPAA, they came back and said, we're going to rate the movie X unless you remove this scene. Mm-hmm. And they literally cut it out just to send back to the MPAA, put it back in for the actual, distribution of the film, which is also, I feel like you couldn't get away with that anymore,
Yeah, it's a very fun, very punk rock move to sort of circumvent them in that way. And also they were wrong because it is impactful. It moves the entirety of the movie. Like that is the inciting incident in a way, or well, one of a couple inciting incidents. And yeah, I think it's really great. It is still incredibly effective. Like I watched The Happening a bunch recently for the podcast, and some kids get killed in that as well. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. It was a lot to be watching so many child deaths in a row, I gotta say. But yeah, it still holds the power, has some longevity, no doubt. Mm.
It's just also a great squib too that goes on. I mean, the shot of it is well done.
Yeah, they said they just filled the back of the ice cream with a hose with some blood in it, spat it out on her. Looks great. You'd never know. I think from that quote, though, France got it right. In fact, based on the restrictions from the origination of the term auteur in Cahiers du Cinema, where they deemed auteurs to be those directors whose authorial stamp transcends the formulaic genre material with which they work. And in that way, Carpenter is almost the ultimate auteur. Someone like Lynch, who works to create an individualistic work, right? He is trying to make something that communicates a message rather than an enjoyable movie for audiences, right? That's not his number one priority. Meanwhile, Carpenter, since the word go, has been taking these movies that are on paper basically nothing, right? It's like 5 sentences to describe his first 5 movies.
Yeah.
And each one completely transcends any expectations that you might have based on those descriptions. And I think that that's what Carpenter does so uniquely and so specially. The way he interprets the material is distinct because there are people who have worked off his scripts. And even when they're good, like Eyes of Laura Mars, they're not as good as Carpenter's own. And so what he's bringing to these scripts is his own autorial eye. And I think that it's really something special that he does.
Yeah, I think the guy is for sure a visionary director. He has an idea in his head of exactly what the thing should look like. I almost feel like...
And not just for the movie.
Exactly. I feel like when he starts a film, he can almost like play it out in his mind the way that his movies come across on screen. For better or for worse, his name is on the film and it is his vision. And sometimes it works. And I do feel like the guy deserves the lion's share of the praise. And then when you get to that back half of the career, he probably does deserve the lion's share of the blame for, but even with the bad movies, there are things to appreciate. And it is impossible to look at something like Vampires and say that's not a John Carpenter movie. They all still have a very particular feel to them, and it is his singular vision of what a movie should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's right after film school for Carpenter, and he wants to make this splash, so he decides that he's going to emulate his hero, Howard Hawks. As we were just talking about off air, the dude put 4 of Hawks' movies on his Sight and Sound top 10, had an immense influence on him, and, I mean, he's great. He's a great director. It's understandable why that is the case. In fact, this is essentially an updated Rio Bravo. Carpenter even snuck the name John T. Chance as the film editor in as an homage to John Wayne's character of the sheriff, something that I thought was interesting that Hawks himself sort of spiritually remade with El Dorado, although this, I think, is a more successful update in terms of both being further from the source material and also just being a more compelling movie for me.
Yeah, I feel like this does take the general outline of Rio Bravo, but then Carpenter does also pull in a ton of different elements. Like the other huge influence, of course, is Night of the Living Dead.
Definitely.
And on paper, I don't know if those two movies work together, but I do think he marries those ideas in a very effective manner.
Yeah, I think part of where it becomes so Hawksian is that his own directing style in terms of the naturalism and economy of movement of the characters, I think, does come across. Also, the way that the characters themselves are these sort of flawed but hyper-professional anti-heroes, you know. Snake Plissken is, of course, the example, but in this movie, we have Darwin Jostin as Napoleon Wilson, and he kills it in this role. Across from Austin Stoker's Lieutenant Ethan Bishop, you have this great black hat, white hat dynamic of classic Westerns. It's really working in terms of feeling both retro and immensely of its time as well.
Yeah, I think the characters are the thing that is most derivative of a Western. Just the fact that Napoleon Wilson has so many, I have my moments, don't I? Like, he's got all these one-liners that I feel like from a worse actor or a worse script, you would just end up rolling your eyes at every single one of them.
Yeah.
But because the material is so strong, and I do think his acting is really good. I know this guy didn't go on to do, he doesn't have a ton of credits, but it is like, as a guy who's aping old Western kind of stylings, it's like that performance and the material work so well together. And then it's just Bishop is kind of your classic good guy, and then you've got Lee, who's like a very Hawksian female that is, she's not a pushover, right? She's like
this cool tough woman who can hold it with the boys when they're in a pinch.
She's like willing to get in there and do the dirty work herself if she needs to, and
barely flinches when she gets shot.
She just like eats a bullet and is like, all right, I guess I'll keep shooting people. It's like, all that
kicks that guy in the nuts right after.
Yeah, it's and just you could kind of like take that stuff out and plug it into a black and white Western, and I feel like it would still work. So
absolutely, yeah. Laurie Zimmer is great as Lee. She's also a really great contrast to the character of Julie, also played well by Nancy Loomis, who is more of the like cowardly character. She wants to sell out the guy who ran in there. She says, "Give them to them."
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the most realistic character that audiences kind of latch onto and go, "Yeah, I'm with her." And then you get to be like, "Oh wow, these guys are so fucking cool and honorable and don't want to do that." It gives them a pedestal to put them on, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that moment that really solidifies how good of a guy Bishop is. The fact that, I don't think any, after the guy runs in, they don't get any backstory for why he's there or what happened to him. But Bishop is just kind of like, no, I'm in charge of this precinct. This guy needs help.
He came here for help. We're going to give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I also do like that despite being on opposite ends of the sort of crime spectrum, that Napoleon and Bishop do have this similar ethos, again, very Hawksian, of a job well done is its own reward. right? As opposed to superficial praise. This is a pretty direct connection to Only Angels Have Wings. I mean, that's not the only one, but most directly from the ones that I have seen. A pilot crashes, and somebody is like, how can you all move on this quickly? And Cary Grant is like, he just wasn't good enough. Like, fuck, man.
Damn.
Yeah, it's cold, but it was very cool, I have to admit. We also do have Deborah Hill in the mix as a script supervisor before she became the iconic Carpenter producer we all know and love.
Yep. Also a uncredited assistant editor. So I think her and Carpenter, that's kind of how they really formed their relationship that would, go on for the next 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah, I think also uncredited production coordinator and costumer and a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I'm sure on a $200,000 movie, she was probably, they might have told her day of what she was doing for the next 8 hours. So,
and so, yeah, Carpenter himself described the movie as a mix of Western and Night of the Living Dead, as you mentioned, and also as a movie driven by random violence, chance, and fate. They also talk a lot about the state of transition for the station, and it, along with the similarities between Bishop and Wilson, sort of tie to the death of the idea of a hero and the people's lack of faith in the police. I think this also is sort of a very Hawksian thing to have this lack of faith in institutions, and I think that he does a great job sort of exploring that very, very subtly just through these characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the major kind of connective tissue in Carpenter movies, right? Is like a mistrust of authority and even his career. I mean, I feel like the guy got so burned out by studios that if he could do it himself for less money, he was happy to take that opportunity. Right. But yeah, I feel like there are all these little hints in Assault on Precinct 13 that are much, much more subtle than something like They Live. But this is a world where the ice cream man has a gun under the dashboard. It's like there's always something a little off in this universe that it's like bubbling under the surface and just waiting to erupt.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I had sort of been developing this intense conspiracy theory about the ice cream man being an undercover cop. And then in the commentary, Carpenter's like, and it's the ice cream man. And I was like, well, there that goes out the window.
Yeah, I mean, he is posted up taking notes. I mean, I think he's probably just ringing up the totals for the day, but I could totally see reading it that way.
Part of what also makes the movie so cool is the way it uses this sort of explosive violence to punctuate the sleepy scenes. It makes them feel so intense when things do finally bubble over into that violence.
The movie is so deliberately paced at the beginning of it. And I feel like there is this really smart thing that Carpenter does when Bishop first arrives to the precinct, where it's like he meets with the main team at the very beginning, but then he has all these breakout conversations in every single room. And not only is it establishing the characters that you're going to see for the rest of the movie, but it is also giving you a layout of this is where all the violence is going to happen. And I need you to know how this building works. And I think that's a really smart decision that when the violence does happen, every corridor and every room that can be in play.
Right. How much of it is even left that they can escape further into. Yeah, Tommy Lee Wallace mentioned a little something about that in terms of utilizing the very constant panning camera, a lot of character motion to sort of establish the layout. Really, really well done. I think it's a really cool way to do that. They also, even before that, sort of, use the driving and the open outside spaces of the first act to create this feeling of claustrophobia when you get compressed into the lockdown, right? As the movie becomes more intense, so too are you shut into this station with them instead of getting these big scenes of the beautiful California landscape, which Carpenter and Tommy Lee Wallace both had a lot of complaints about the lack of urban blight. Yeah, the Carpenter in his commentary would be like, well, these areas luckily were run down. Now they're all beautiful. And, it seemed like even in the 70s, he felt like he had to hunt for dilapidated LA. So not like the menacing buildings in New York. It was under 20 days to shoot. Probably because of the budget. It did include a 24-hour shoot at the Old Venice jail. They said that they were filming around Thanksgiving, and Tommy Lee Wallace talked about them scraping together a Thanksgiving dinner, which I thought was kind of cute. And I think sort of indicative of Carpenter's approach to filming. When I was reading the On Set with John Carpenter book that's sort of behind the scenes photographs of his work with Deborah Hill, everybody had really great things to say about just sort of his on-set atmosphere and the way that he treats his crew. And I think that sort of being willing to scrape together that kind of gesture for your cast and crew instead of just being like, hey, here's more pizza, gang, have at it, I think says a lot about him, even as someone who is working with a low budget, or even especially because of that.
I know this movie, this was like, I'm calling in a bunch of favors that I have. Most of the cast, I think Darwin Jostin was his neighbor, and then a lot of the crew were kind of holdovers from people he worked with on Dark Star. So
right.
It was, let's try to do this as cheaply as possible. But I think what he put the money into pays off as well, because he shot on Panavision and then had kind of the best post houses for film development and sound. So
right.
It was, how do we make a $200,000 movie look like it can compete with a bigger film,
Definitely, yeah. Tommy Lee Wallace said they had the Cadillac of those things, Volkswagen everywhere else, which I thought was a really funny way to put it. And it is interesting how these sort of surface details being good stop people from bouncing off of it, even if it is a more amateurish production, right? Because they'll give you a chance to prove yourself. If it looks like a professional movie, it allows you to sort of sink into the world and even overlook some of the flaws that are under the surface. They edit a lot, but also that's like not their main thing. They were learning how to do it. So when you see some of the like jumped frames with the windows when you're like looking at the shootouts, you go, who fucking cares, right? The rest of the movie is so cool, I don't give a shit. And that's what sort of paying attention to those details allows you to do.
Yeah, and I think Carpenter edited under John T. Chance, but I think in his commentary, he just kept being like, I didn't know how to edit for Panavision. Like, I didn't know how to shoot for it, and I didn't know how to edit for it. So everything was just kind of a guessing game when it came to what coverage do we have to put this thing together.
Yeah, and Tommy Lee himself was even like, oh, just being willing to help him in that editing room was sort of how I got the job editing Halloween. Oh, one other thing that I like that the focus on sound did was create an environment where the silenced weapons sort of clear the track to really hear the impact. The shattering glass and wet slaps of bullets penetrating bodies, much more terrifying to me than a simple explosive cacophony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the movie is pretty restrained in its approach to the sound design, and it does kind of let the minimal sound effects, and then we got to talk about it at some point. The incredible score that gets overlaid on top of it. Yep. I still think it's his best theme out of anything he's done. I love the main theme for Assault more than, anything else.
It is propulsive. It really makes you feel it. You want to get up and fucking groove when that song comes on.
Yep.
Yeah, it is great. We should also talk about the name. It was originally the Anderson Alamo, then the Siege, then finally producer Irwin Yablans said, hey, you should change it to Assault on Precinct 13. And now, first off, I must say, I actually really like the name the Anderson Alamo. I think that was a good option, although they said not as catchy on the sort of late night circuit that they were aiming for.
Yeah, Assault on Precinct 13 does sound more menacing.
Yeah.
And it probably would draw a 14-year-old that snuck out for the night would be maybe a little more interested in that than the Anderson Alamo.
I guess. Maybe the teenagers you're hanging out with, Kron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bunch of tough kids with leather jackets and switchblades, dude.
Yeah. But then I also went on a bit of a journey with the title that they landed on, because at first I was outraged that it is not one but two lies. Mm-hmm. First off, it takes place at Precinct 9, Division 13, but then when you look at the exterior shots, they say Division 14.
That's right. It's a nonsense world, George, where nothing matches up.
That's right. Intensely surreal. But then I was like, it is Precinct 13 in a metaphorical sense, the superstitious sense of it being cursed, marked for death, and just plain unlucky. And so in that way, it is the ultimate Precinct 13, and the title has come back around to working for me in more ways than one.
Yeah, I feel like I'm living in Precinct 13 the way you describe it, so...
It is also funny that they talked about when it came out that there was so little budget that there was no poster at first, and that when they went to go out looking for screenings the night it opened, there was just like magic markered white posters with the name on it. And they said they were embarrassed, but it wound up working out okay for him. We did kind of talk about the reception already, but the main thing to note is that the success in the UK created that link with Yablans, who worked with Carp to develop the Babysitter Murders into Halloween and then produce that as well. So truly, without this, there would be nothing of the career that we know and love from John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like you do get some, connective tissue of his kind of overarching themes throughout the rest of his filmography. So if this had not worked out, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he would have got another movie, but it might have not been, hey, go make whatever you want. You know what I mean?
Right. It had to really work for that producer. And then also to show that he could work within that sort of low budget scale, because Halloween was only 600,000, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I think that that's the case. And so being able to work within that limited budget is what lets him be like, but give me Final Cut in order to like work with this. So yeah, it worked out all right. So as we get into the movie, obviously you've listened to the commentary as well. We've both mentioned it. I do want to get your opinion on opening credits, because I know that in Carpenter's commentary, he mentions that it was sort of a budgetary decision to just stretch the film with the black screen for the credits. But forgetting that, I kind of go back and forth, where sometimes I like there to be stuff going on to, actually sort of use the time. But also here, I kind of like it just as an overture, right? Where you can actually absorb the names, you get some time to groove to the theme, we work our way into the world of the movie instead of just being thrown in. Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow. Oh, look at all these names. John T. Chance. Who's that? Bow, 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 bow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the opening credits to this. Like I said, I saw this in a theater. I feel like it was a independent theater where I live, and I feel like the sound guy cranked the volume to max on the opening credits, and then
hell yeah,
and then backed it off. But if the theme wasn't so good, I don't know if you took the theme out of it, I think I would be bored. But yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth. I mean, kind of having it as an overture of like, do you like this song? Because you're going to be hearing it every 25 minutes. And to me, yes, I love this song. So let's go, dude.
Hell yeah. We get this documentary feel with the handheld camera and the timestamps as we get into the actual movie itself. And a group of 6 youths belonging to the gang Street Thunder are running through an alleyway with a bunch of guns when suddenly a voice rings out from above. This is the police. And they take off running down the alley and are promptly, mercilessly mown down. First off, very reminiscent of a Western immediately. Feels like your classic ambush in the gulch kind of thing, but transposed to the urban West instead. But it does also feel like a missed opportunity for Street Thunder to not have a cohesive look, right? I'm not just talking about the United Nations gang that they joke about in the commentaries, which the movie has the radio go, yeah, it's weird, but whatever, which I thought was really funny. But they need an outfit, baby. I'm sure that this was a budget thing, but no wonder they're so intense about revenge. I bet none of the other gangs take them seriously. They're like the orphans from the Warriors.
Yeah, they really need like a shtick. They need a good gimmick to unify all these guys together. And I mean, even when you meet the gang, it's like every nationality is represented. Everyone looks like they're out of a different gang. So yeah, if they could just get on the same page of like, we all wear cleats or something, I think it'd really help them out.
Carpenter clearly learned from this for Big Trouble in Little China when you have the cool sunglasses gang.
Hell yeah, dude.
The police chief of LA is like, hey, yes, maybe we shouldn't be riddling the back of fleeing peoples with bullets, but did you consider that we also lost a ton of automatic weapons that we're scared they might have?
Yeah, the movie, it's a classic Western setup. You can't get too bogged down in virtuous, like how virtuous the police are.
I'm just saying that this is that classic distrust of the institution of the police and how even among this righteous group's, quote unquote, righteous group, that Bishop stands as a shining example of what it once meant to be, this sort of role.
Mm-hmm.
And would you believe it? Street Thunder does have the guns, and cops are back on the menu, boys, because the chiefs swear a blood oath of revenge.
Kin, Ryu, Blanca, they all join forces.
Chun-Li is there, classic Hawksian woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, if Blanca just showed up and shot electricity through everybody.
That would be sick. That would be really sick. I'm thinking M. Bison shows up too, and he's like, Wilson, I'm recruiting you for Shadowloo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that one guy with like super long arms, that could be a lot of fun.
Dawson, yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
He'd be sick. In a way, they are a gang, right? I mean, they're fighting on the street.
Yeah, but they're fighting each other.
You don't think gangs fight each other?
Well, they don't fight in groups. It's just a one-on-one battles.
Because they're honorable, Kron.
There should be like a Street Fighter Rumble mode if you really want to get into gang warfare, you know?
Wow. Dawson becomes a nightmare. He's just spinning around and wailing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they have this blood oath of revenge for the 6, and it's the next morning in West LA, and out comes the white hat of our story, Lieutenant Bishop, whistling a little tune to himself as he heads to his first day of work.
I don't know what his car is, but it's sick. It's
cool.
It's like a canary yellow. It looks like it's got, an engine that gets 4 miles to the gallon in it, but it looks cool as hell.
Hell yeah, it does. They give him this supervisory job at the Anderson precinct, but Bishop is pissed because they're closing it down and he wants to be a hero. And the captain there, or commander, says, there's no heroes anymore, Bishop. Only men who follow orders. Wow.
Dang.
It's 5:11 now in Los Cruces, and Napoleon Wilson is being transferred from prison to death row along with fellow inmates Wells and Cordell. Amazing intro to him, this cowboy stare as the camera pushes in with an atypical for Carpenter zoom. He just has his little quip of gotta smoke right away. Come on, that's cool. He's cool.
Yeah, I love his intro too, because it's like the warden, when Charles Cypress's character, it's like he turns his back and the warden knocks Napoleon out of his chair. Mm-hmm. And then when Cypress turns back around, he's like, oh, he doesn't sit in chairs as good as he used to. And Napoleon Wilson goes along with it. The dude is not a snitch. He knows that he can get his revenge later down the line. He would rather take that line than be like a punk about it,
Yeah, I think it's pretty great. He is unbelievably badass and stoic. He's established as that so quickly. He says 4 things in this scene, and you're completely on his side, despite the fact that he is a murderer, right? Or he must be, if he's going to death row. Must have done something really bad. But he asks for a smoke twice, and then he tells a joke about how this guy mumbles a little bit, but he gets the general idea of what he's saying. Mm-hmm. And then, this being thrown to the ground, and I don't sit in chairs as well as I used to. Economy of dialogue to really put you on his side for sure.
Yep.
He does get revenge on the warden, though, just before he leaves, asking to stretch before the ride, and then sort of lassoing the chain around the warden's legs and sweeping them from under him. He don't stand up as good as he used to, he retorts.
Hell yeah. And all those guys, everyone has a gun in his face as soon as he does it. I mean, he's got 4 firearms pressed up against his cheeks.
Really fun. Revenge at all costs. It's the ethos.
Well, and he does. So he asks Cypress, he asks the other convict if they've got a smoke. And I feel like that's almost his test of someone's character, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily will you give me a cigarette, but more how will you respond to this question? Will you be mean to me? Will you mock me? Or are you going to be at least just genuinely, no, I don't have one,
Yeah.
But he repeats it all throughout the film, and I mean, we'll get there, but Bishop is the first guy that is just kind of no, I'm sorry. Right. Treats him like a human being rather than throwing it back in his face. So It is kind of a cool thing that he does to establish someone's character right off the get-go.
Yeah. And I also just really like how long they sort of take getting on the bus, right? They sort of establish that laconic pace in this moment here. It's really working for me.
Yeah, the Carpenter commentary is infuriating. I personally really just love the pacing of this. I mean, I love this movie start to finish. And if you listen to his commentary the entire time, he's like, I wish I could go back and speed this all up. I mean, I think by the end of it, he would have a 40-minute movie if you let him go back into the editing room with this thing.
Yeah, it's wild. I was saying that if you didn't like this movie and you listen to that commentary, he's not going to do much to convince you otherwise.
Yep.
The lieutenant, though, arrives at the station This is, again, where Carpenter was sort of grousing about the bright and unblighted LA with its unmenacing architecture, but I thought it was cool to see how he sort of worked around it, and he mentioned that these shots establishing it as isolated are 4 different locations mashed into one. I was just like, damn, it takes so much work to make a movie. Inside, Bishop meets Cheney, the officer working the desk, Lee, an assistant, and Julie, the phone operator, and plenty of packing boxes. And they shut off the phones and electricity at 10 tomorrow morning, they say. But we also get a little backstory for Bishop, who says he grew up in the area and points out a carved word on the desk that he did when his father sent him to get scared straight after swearing in the presence of his mother. Pretty advanced for a little kid, Lee says. after looking at the carving, which I really like as sort of giving you that sort of edge to Bishop, right? To say he's not just a goody-goody, that he has this rebellious side to him.
Well, and doesn't Bishop say, like, you know, I was worried for years after that the police chief would come after me? And it's like, damn, dude, in this world, not even the cops trust the cops. Like,
I do also like that it sort of homages Hitchcock here, who's another of Carpenter's idols, by replicating a story from Hitchcock's own life that scarred him. Cool little homage there. Mm-hmm. And he goes to meet with the commander next. They've had a hell of a night already. He says, I'm going to the news station at 7 o'clock. That means all you got to do is answer the phones and send any strays who think this is a still operating station my way until the next guy arrives at 4 a.m.
He's also loading up a shotgun and then putting it in a locked crate, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but I mean, you got to have the drama later of getting that gun out.
That's right. If that doesn't make sense, then what do I have 5 different shotguns and 5 different locked boxes here for, Kron?
Sounds like some sort of jigsaw scenario, but...
Well, you never know what's going to happen, is all I'm saying. What if someone breaks in and I need to lock them into the saw trap that I've set up here?
5 shotguns arranged in a circle.
I was really inspired by Saw 6, except I didn't have the space for a full carousel of shotguns, so I just put them all into a box.
I got to get back on... I don't think I've watched past 2, and I feel like they, you know... I feel like people are, like, big on 10, you know? So...
It's pretty good, I guess. It was, like, kind of a return to form. It was... Those are movies that I, like, watch. I've seen them all. Mm-hmm. But if you asked me... if I enjoyed them, would go, I don't know. Do I enjoy them? I certainly tolerate them more than most people in that I have seen them all. But there are some bright spots, but I'm always just like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, every aspect of it is fucking dumb. And maybe that's what I'm looking for. Maybe I like that it's dumb. But it is definitely dumb.
I feel like even by the time I saw 2, I was like, oh, there's really only like one idea for this thing. People get trapped in crazy circumstances, and then you see their heads explode, I guess.
The real thing that I keep coming back for, I guess, is seeing how they're going to make it all fit into the convoluted history. Because they set up the death of Jigsaw in, like, Saw 3, and then they went, fuck. What did we do that for? Now we need to only work in the past. And so everything that happens in the series is prior to 3 in a way that you're like, wow, I respect the effort to sort of make it all shoehorn in here instead of just going, fuck it, we're spinning off. Although I guess that's what Spiral was. And it turned out that one sucked. So what are you going to do?
So they'll keep working in the years, I don't know, 1980 to 1993 or something.
That's all you can do, Kron. That's all you can do. The station is in a rough area, though. We see a worried father going to pick up the family nanny, and the gang chiefs are out driving around with their new guns. They're eager to test them out. They're pointing them out the window during rush hour to demonstrate that they're in control. And the dad reinforces this. He tells his daughter that the belief in the police being able or willing to help people is a real 6th grade idea from her teacher.
You know, another character that, because she's just like, the cops are here to help us. And he's like, we're not in trouble. Like, we're not asking these cops a thing. And then I also think with the gang stuff, there's a little bit of like, they're aiming it out the window and you get the shots of them looking through the scope, but they don't shoot the gun ever at this part. And I think there's a bit of it that's like, that's too impersonal for them. Like they want the first inciting thing to be this like up close, face to face kind of kill.
Yeah.
That happens later in the movie.
I also do think that this is sort of where it becomes a horror movie for me, is that when you watch these guys driving around and feeling confident enough in that lawlessness of the area and the time to just hang out the window with a gun, pointing it at random people on the street, that's fucking scary. That's a really scary idea. And when you're looking through the scope at like this homeless fellow and a little old lady who's walking with some groceries, you're like, fuck, dude, are they going to kill one of these guys?
Yeah, it's very tense. I mean, I guess just a bummer that it's like still plausible today, that random chaotic violence like that could happen at any point.
Yeah. We then go to the transport bus where Napoleon talks with his screw who's overseeing things. You're either curious about me or you want to give me some shit. And he says, I don't understand you, Wilson. Curious. Just one of my faves of his little one-liners there.
Yeah. I think the next part is like something like, you're not cruel, you're not a psychopath. And then his line after that is like, I am an asshole. You can't take everything away from me. Just such a good little retort,
Definitely. And we do learn that Wilson killed some men, and everyone asks him the same question, why? And he always tells them the same thing, that he's got something to do with death. Again, just he always has these clips where the guy's like, that's no answer, and he's like, I thought it was pretty good. But he'll tell the cops sometime how he got the name Napoleon at the moment of dying, and this is one of the answers that we never do get, not even a fake answer like potentially fake answer like the something to do with death story. So
yeah, but I mean, the callback to this line at the end of the movie is so good, too.
Sweet, baby. It's sweet. They're 6 hours away from Sonora, and they have to stop at the closest precinct to take care of one of the men being transported, who is sick and worsening, and that just happens to be the Anderson precinct, if you can believe it. 6:41 now, and the dad is lost as hell, so he pulls over to call for directions, and his daughter is stoked to see the ice cream man pull up. She goes to get some, but he is distracted watching the gang car drive around, and he is reluctant to give her some ice cream.
I mean, she has a point. The music is still playing.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. Just turn that shit off if you're not trying to give out ice cream. He does give her the ice cream in a hurry, though, and she runs off as the car swings around for a third time, the car with the gang members in it. And the gang grabs him, shoves a gun in his mouth, then forces him to the ground. But they're interrupted by the little girl, who got regular vanilla instead of vanilla twist, which was, in my opinion, more evidence that this is a lousy cop and not the ice cream man, who would never make such a mistake.
Get the red string out and start connecting these pictures, dude. You're starting to convince me.
But they bop her with a shot to the chest, right through the ice cream. It's insane. It's so casual. The red and white is this shocking pop of color. I love Carpenter mused. Definitely not a Disney movie at this point.
Because, Kim Richards had been in 2 Disney movies before this, and I don't even think Disney would allow this anymore. Like, if you were like, hey, this girl's going to go do a low-budget movie where she gets shot in the chest now. Yeah. I think Disney would just be like, here's $100,000, don't do that.
Please just be in Escape to Witch Mountain and hang out in your trailer the whole time.
I also really like this scene, because, as crazy as it is shooting Kathy, the way that they menace that ice cream truck driver, I feel like they put like the entire silencer in that guy's mouth before anything happens. And you just know it, especially, I think the score is just this like single sharp note that's kind of underneath everything. It's tense.
It really is. It totally throws you off. You're just waiting for it to happen. You think that they're going to shoot him in the face. And then instead, they shoot him on the ground incredibly casually. It's so awful. Like, it's just the fact that he's like standing on him or something. He does like this little step down, treats him like an animal, basically. 2 shots in the broad daylight. Then they just get out of there just in time for Dad to end his call and see what's happened. The 2 bodies splayed out in the street. Dad grabs a gun from under the dash of the ice cream truck, and the chase is on. Sick peel out, but not before one last shot of the corpses abandoned there.
Yeah, he just leaves her there, which I don't really hate the choice in the movie, because the dude's just on a mission at that point, like, I have a gun, I'm gonna go get revenge.
That's right. He's seeing red. The bus arrives at the precinct. The transport cop convinces Bishop to let him pop them in the holding cells so they don't all catch whatever this guy is sick with. Dude is hacking up a damn lung. He looks really ill.
I don't think that guy has a single line in the whole movie. He just exists to cough uncontrollably.
That's the dream role.
Yeah, I would have loved to just the opportunity to do something like that.
Napoleon is surprised that Bishop does seem genuinely apologetic to not have a cigarette for him. And yes, this is his little test to see how people treat him. You learn a lot from someone by how they respond. And it's now 7 p.m. The sun is setting with the chase still on. I love this shot with the camera affixed to the front wheel well. So you see the light and sort of the side of the front car and the other one behind it in pursuit. And it like continues into nightfall. There's this little time jump. Just really awesome scene.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like those 70s, I feel like that one is really cool. Or they'll sometimes do one that's like kind of over the top of the, like the back trunk, but looking up over the driver.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that shot, it's like literally half a light. And that's the kind of thing you do if it's like your first time using Panavision and you're like, what the hell can this camera, like, what is it capable of? Some way to show the capabilities that you have versus a standard, I don't know, like 4x3 camera or something.
It works really well. It is sort of what these widescreens are great for, right? And so it's funny, too, then, to think of how tragic it is for the display on TV. It gets, like, I mean, they have to use the pan and scan stuff because they, like, don't have a widescreen TV on the commercial market in a way that severely diminishes a lot of his work in particular.
Yep. I got a VHS copy of Halloween. I turned it off after like 10 minutes because I was just like, this is insane how much is removed. I mean, you've chopped off like half the image on either side.
Wild. They finally pull over to confront each other, though, and Dad's new pea shooter is enough to end one of the four leaders. I also fucking love this decision to have this guy barely even register the gunshots. You don't know if he is dead until he fucking falls over.
Yep.
Awesome decision.
I've got Assault on the System by Troy Howarth, and there's like a little excerpt from a old interview with the guy who played that role, and he just said like in that role he didn't want to be a guy with a gun. He wanted to play it like he was a gun, like that he was just a machine that existed.
Mission accomplished, I think. He's quickly out of ammo, though, and they chase him to the mid-closure station. It is also genuinely frightening, I think, when he looks back and suddenly there's 6 more of them as they're just joining from just around, right? And this is where it sort of feels a lot like Night of the Living Dead to me, is this sort of amassing army sort of coming out of nowhere, gets out of hand very quickly.
Yeah, this is the first kind of step of what the rest of the movie is going to be, with just this unrelenting force of bad guys that will not stop.
And he's in shock when he stumbles in. He's trying to warn them, and he gets sort of shuffled off to the commander's office. But suddenly the phone lines are dead, and they assume that the phone company just did it early. But it compounds with the power cutting out entirely, despite the streetlights still working. Cheney goes to call for help on his two-way radio in his car, but as soon as he gets down the front stairs, he is dispatched silently. Julie even thinks he just fell.
Yeah, she like chuckles at the beginning of the scene.
That old fool. He only fell down the stairs and isn't moving. What an idiot.
It would be a good goof if he hadn't been shot.
But they all get nervous when he doesn't get up after a while, and Bishop goes out to check. But more silenced gunfire surrounds him quickly, and Bishop has to duck back inside. And he sort of sees the assembling army outside, and what's happening dawns on him. Lock the doors and stay down, he tells the people inside, and runs for the departing prison bus. Problem is, he's a little late to warn them, as the bullets rain down and quickly dispatch everyone except for Wells and Wilson. And honestly, the first time you see this, or at least the first time I saw this, it's a really shocking scene. So many characters that you assume will be part of the movie based on their screen time so far are just cut down. And the cop, most of all, it's brutal too, as he's basically like a human shield as he falls on top of Napoleon, and these squibs are popping off his back, and Bishop has to come help Napoleon make it back in. Just really surprising, powerful stuff.
Yeah, I think Cyphers does a real good job of, like, he just kind of like slumps over as soon as he gets shot, and it looks brutal, it looks like a guy that just got shot twice in the back.
Yeah. Bishop puts both prisoners back in the holding cells. There is a great moment where they sort of size each other up a bit. There's a scene about who's in charge Carpenter described it as. And Wilson gives Bishop back the keys, presumably partially because of his response to the cigarette test before.
Mm-hmm.
Gunfire continues, plenty of destruction. It's a fun practical thing, too. They just shoot this shit up.
Yeah, that one scene stretches out for what feels like an eternity in the movie, where you're just watching window panes get shot out and papers flying off of the desk, and yeah.
It finally ends, though, and the small noises do feel incredibly loud as they wait to hear what's next. Again, that emphasis on sound design, I think, is really crucial to this movie. Bishop goes to the window. He sees that the mob seems to have retreated for now, but Lee tells him that they're basically sitting ducks because the back exit has a barbed wire fence. That means even going out that way, you'd have to circle around to the front. And the neighbors are far enough to not hear anything with the silenced weapons, so they're on their own. And using binoculars, Bishop finally spots them getting into position to lay siege. It's so many guys. It's wild. They even set up a roadblock.
Again, the setup, too, of like, just establishing that the neighborhood is abandoned does so much of just kind of, that, I don't know, like urban decay. Like this whole area has just gone into ruin and it basically doesn't exist anymore,
Right. And the 3 remaining leaders drop off this bloody sheet and chuck a jar of blood at the steps, ritually marking them for death. And this is when Julie is immediately like, let's just give them the fucking guy. That's what they want. But Bishop gives her a civilized look, which she balks at and says he came for help. I'm going to give him all the help I can, like we said.
Yeah, he's a good guy, willing to put his life on the line for something he knows nothing about, essentially.
Right. And the assault is back on, now with cars moving forward as defense, with the guns ringing out. That is a very badass shot as these cars sort of approach them. And the women go to free the prisoners at Bishop's request. But while Lee is unlocking Napoleon's door, she does catch a bullet in the arm after the gang breaks down the exterior door back there. And Napoleon breaks the arm of the guy who did it. It's this really fun, brutal, quick shot. If you look at his hand, you'll see that it is clearly a mannequin hand, but don't look at his hand, because if you look at his arm, it looks fucking good.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever noticed the hand. I just always look at the bone break. I mean,
that's movie magic, baby. And they run for the main group as the rest of the gang pours in. Napoleon asks for a gun, since he can't hold the door for long. And after some consideration, Bishop throws him a shotgun, which he unloads on the men attacking them. I also do love the moment after they're dead, and you can literally see the wheels turning in both Napoleon and Bishop's head of like, now what, right? I just gave that guy a gun. What is he going to do?
Yep. I mean, just the way Napoleon like slightly looks down at the gun and then has this outline of a smile appear on his face. I do feel like there's a part, because he is a death row prisoner, there is a part of it where he's just like, this is what I do good, he's good at killing folks, I guess. So
yeah, definitely. They are interrupted, though, by someone crawling in through the window who Bishop dispatches, and the fight is back on. Now criminal and cop working together as more men pour in through every gap. Julie, unfortunately, caught a bullet as well, and hers was in a more vital organsy place than Lee's was.
Not just the arm, probably somewhere like a heart.
Right. So they sadly reckon with her death, but they can't take too long because they need to barricade the station. Bishop also notices several explosive chemical canisters that he's grateful didn't get clipped in the fight.
Seems impossible when you watch the movie, but, it's a movie after all. We gotta...
That's right. That's exactly right. Shush. Wilson also takes the opportunity to point something out, which is that all the bodies have been removed and the vehicles replaced, hiding all the signs of the attack so anyone passing on the street doesn't see anything. These are some good-ass gang members.
Well, they also just got so many dudes. You can easily assign, 20 of them to clean up, so...
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. That's like the hazing, is you're stuck on corpse duty.
Yeah, if you're low level, you don't get a gun right away. You gotta pick up a body first.
The marking did mean to the death, per Wells, so the pressure is on, and he wants to escape, but they convince him that he'd be fucked out there, especially since his gun has been unloaded the whole time.
Yep.
Got his ass.
That's a great scene where he's kind of like threatening Lee, and she looks down, and she's like, your gun's not even loaded.
It's true. And in fact, they're all real low on ammo. But Napoleon finally gets a cigarette and a light from Lee, so things are looking up.
Oh, you could cut the sexual tension between those two with a knife in that scene.
Yeah, especially after he broke that guy's arm after she kicked him in the nuts and everything. Mm-hmm. They're both very impressed with each other. Mm-hmm. 8:08 p.m. A cop car is doing a circuit of the area looking into reports of firecrackers / possible gunfire. And they request backup of both additional squad cars and helicopter surveillance. But it's just them because everyone else is busy. That damn Saturday night overload, baby. I do think it's very funny when they literally are like, well, we definitely don't need to go down that street because the other police station is on it while we're looking.
Yeah. Like the one street they don't go down. And it's probably only a couple blocks. They could have just turned around at the end.
No. Come on. There's a cop station there. What's going to happen on that street? But the new plan for our trapped crew is someone is going to go out through the basement and out the sewer grate, then steal a car and go for help. And who's going to take the risk? Well, it's got to be someone who knows how to hotwire a car. So they all look to the criminals. And they play potatoes to see who's going to take the risk. A game I don't know, but seemed interesting.
You know, I don't know if it's a real game, George.
Maybe they invented it in prison.
I was thinking about this when I watched it because there's potatoes in this. In Big Trouble in Little China, they're playing some game that I have no clue how it works. I mean, even before they cut the bottle, and I was just like, is this like a Carpenter? Like he just invents a fun little, like everybody needs a game to do?
This is his directorial cameo that no one has noticed before.
Mm-hmm. I'm putting the pieces together. Get back out that red string I was talking about.
Right? We're just going to code a whole room in different conspiracy theories about Precinct 13. Wells is the loser, though, as he predicts. I always lose. How do you think I wound up in here? It's fun. He's fun. It's the guy from Rocky. He's great. Mm-hmm. He and Wilson say their farewells, and we get a moment to take it all in, finally, which I appreciate as a viewer. You know, the camera shows the chaos, Lee's shot arm. It pauses on the corpse of Julie and the still in shock father. I think it's important for us to sort of understand, like, to have a moment to breathe and look at what's happened so far.
Yep.
They watch Wells make his run for it, and it looks good at first. He's clear of the sewers, and as the gang spots him and makes their approach, he unlocks the car, quickly hotwires it, and he's off with a look of triumph on his face. A look that is promptly blown off as a gang member reveals themselves in the back seat.
Damn, they thought of everything, dude.
They did. They really did. That's like the mid-level members had to sit and wait in the cars just in case someone showed up.
Yeah, they got a gun, but they had to hide somewhere.
Exactly.
I do like the scene between Napoleon and Wells, though, where I think he tells him, like, hey, before you find the first way to get to Mexico, make sure to call somebody and let them know we're here. Yeah. And I do get the sense, though, that, like, Wells would do that, just based on what we've seen these characters go through, you know?
Yeah, he's, like, not quite as archetypical as Napoleon is of this sort of honorable criminal or honorable anti-hero, but he definitely still has some of those tendencies, no doubt. You can even see in the fact that he goes out there, right? That he takes the risk.
Yeah, he tries to do the thing. Like he could, I guess, have just like run off some direction, but yeah, he actually tries to do the plan he said he would go through with. Exactly.
I also love Bishop's reaction where he weakly says, maybe it was just the window breaking.
Yeah.
And then he has to, like, process his emotion, and he smashes some debris. Just fucking good. Mm-hmm. Too bad, Wells. Never got to see the border. They're out of time, ammo, and luck, so down into the basement they go for their last stand. Napoleon says that with 8 shots left between them, that long, narrow entrance might at least give them a few minutes. I also love, this is maybe one of my favorite interactions in the movie, when Lee and Napoleon are talking, and she tells him that she has 2 bullets left. Should I save them for us? And he says, save them for the first 2 assholes who come through that vent. Just no making it easy for them, no taking the quick way out. They're fighting to the bitter end. I love that for them.
Hell yeah. It is my review on Letterboxd of this movie, is that exchange, because
hell yeah,
I love it so much too. I mean, just it shows the character of who these people are, right? There is an option, there's an easy way out, but I would rather shoot 2 nameless goons before I eat a bullet myself, you know?
That's right. And she asks him why he doesn't take off, and he responds that there are 2 things you should never run from, even if it costs you your life. The first is a helpless man who can't run with you, Exhibit A upstairs. The second, she asks, And he gives her just a knowing look that, to me, indicates the answer is a hot babe like Lee.
Hell yeah, dude. You gotta look cool in front of hot babes.
That's right. That's exactly right. They're out of time. I was born out of time, grouses Napoleon, which is also very fun.
Mm-hmm.
But Bishop has a plan. He's going to strap the chemical container and some magnesium flares to a pipe and use it to blow the hell out of everyone in the hallway. Can you hit it, is the question. I got 3 shots, that's enough, he tells Napoleon, who responds. Hard to argue with a confident man.
Hell yeah. A line that will come back mere minutes later. I mean, like, they're not even done with the callback lines yet, you know?
The cops actually do roll up and check on the station, but it all looks quiet. So they just kind of circle and request backup again, and it starts to rain while they think, hey, wait a minute. That's not rain. It's blood from the dead phone repairman still hanging from his perch. What nice last little grim shock with only 7.5 minutes left in the movie. Mm-hmm. It's fucking great. Emergency, emergency. The gang springs into action as Molotov cocktails rain in above them. They get their nice defensive sign. I do think it's funny that it's a support your local police sign. It's going to support them, all right. I
love that. The fact that they chose to put that on the front of the sign that they're literally going to be supporting themselves with.
Yeah, it's some nice levity to sort of get some nervous giggles in between the waiting and the whistling and Bishop sort of asking how Napoleon got his name. He says, I'll tell you, maybe in a minute or two.
Oh, what a payoff for the line earlier.
I love it. And the fact that that means nothing to Bishop, that's just a callback for himself.
Mm-hmm. And for us, I guess, the people lucky enough to be watching this movie.
They're shooting and battering and holding them off and dropping back to their defensive position. And after a few misses, Bishop does use his last bullet to pop the flares and cause a huge explosion. The neighbors definitely heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's chaos as the remaining gang members flee while the backup cops roll in. Some really nice foggy shots to close things out. They find a ton of corpses in the basement. Our gang, though, is still kicking. Our gang. Not the gang, is still kicking, standing together at the end of the hall, and Wilson breaks the tension with anybody gotta smoke. You gotta love it.
It's so great, too, when you see, like, the smoke dissipate, and there's just, you see the back of 2 cops, and all 3 of them are like, they each just have, like, a club in their hand, you know? Like, they are still ready to fight if they need to.
Hell yeah. And the shocked father is taken away, but Lee walks out on her own 2 feet. Hell yeah, Lee.
Yeah, they're like, we have a stretcher for you. And she just, I think she gives Napoleon one last look and then just walks out.
Yeah, and the cop is like, we have a stretcher for you. He like repeats it. She's like, no, fuck you. They also have to take Napoleon away. Bishop throws the cops to the side when they go to lock his chains again, but he also knows that he can't do anything real. He says it'd be an honor if you'd walk outside with me, he tells Wilson. Wilson retorts, I know it would. You rascal, Napoleon. You're pretty fancy there. But it is a great ending for these Hawksian archetypes, that professional respect worth more than anything else. And yeah, out they go as equals in this great semi-Pyrrhic victory.
Yep.
Just really, really awesome stuff. And yeah, it zips right along. It's not a long movie to start with. So much action there at the end makes it fly by.
Yeah. The thing I love most about the ending is I feel like for most new directors or any director, I would think the tendency would be, because there has been some establishment of Napoleon and Lee's relationship, and I feel like your first instinct would be that should be the final kind of exchange of dialogue is between these 2 characters.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also not exactly what this movie is about. Like, it's more important that these 2 guys who are on the exact opposite ends of the legal system, essentially,
right,
that they have come together, that they respect one another. And it's like that trumps the kind of classic male-female romantic relationship that the movie might have established, you know?
That's right. Dudes Rock, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now, Kron, we've reached the part of the episode where we don't necessarily have to describe it as the best horror movie ever made, although, like I said, you're certainly welcome to do that. But on these Spotlight episodes, what we do is we discuss why it is worthwhile to feature here, worth talking about, and I'm going to let you start.
All right. I mean, just right off the bat, I was going to describe this as the best almost horror movie ever made. Because, I mean, genre is somewhat meaningless, right?
Yeah, total agreement.
Yeah, but to me, this kind of leans a little more of what I would consider to be like a thriller. It does have horror elements, but that's also not the main focus, is kind of the gore or the scares. You know, those are almost, they do exist, but they're secondary to the story that you get. And I guess just, I mean, what makes this so worth a watch to me is this is in a way the most undistilled version of, or maybe distilled version of Carpenter that you'll ever get, right? Like, this is kind of him before he really links up with Deborah Hill, before he's working with guys like Cundy, and after that, Kibbe.
Stan Winston effects, you know, I mean, no doubt the thing's script is great, but effects showcase a lot of the times.
Yep. So I do think Carpenter was a genius of finding collaborators that knew what he wanted and knew how to give him his vision. But in a lot of ways, Assault on Precinct 13 is kind of just Carpenter. He certainly has a lot of those people along, like we talked about how Deborah Hill was involved with this movie, but not to the extent that she would be going forward.
Right.
So this is, to me, 100% Carpenter in a way. And like I said at the beginning, for better or for worse, when that guy's name is on the opening credits, it is his vision. And I almost think this movie works better in certain aspects than any other Carpenter movie would going forward. I love the characters. They are extremely one-dimensional. People are either good or they are bad, or they're Napoleon, who's like a little bit riding the line, you know, but there is not this great deal of depth. You don't understand why the gang exists or really what they're doing. The plot is so threadbare that it barely connects to each. Like, you have these 4 independent strings that all kind of meet at the precinct, but at the same time, it's like, well, is the gang really after inflicting damage on the police because the police killed their friends? Or is the gang only there because this guy whose daughter got shot ran into the station? It's a really like thin plot, but I don't know if that's what the movie is really drawing on either. Its main draw is these characters and what they go through and how they interact. And like I said, out of a lot of people's mouths or out of a lot of writers' scripts, most of this dialogue would be cheesy. It should be cheesy. It should be laughable. But Carpenter was smart enough to like get it just Western enough and just Night of the Living Dead enough and get someone who could actually deliver those lines in a believable way that it all works. I guess I would end by saying I don't know if this is the best Carpenter movie, right? I think you could easily look at something like The Thing that had this big budget, really, really amazing effects. Or you could look at something like Halloween that is just purely visceral terror. But to me, this is such a revisitable Carpenter movie. And I feel like a lot of people do overlook this one. You know, they kind of jump in at Halloween and go forward from there. And I think it is so rewarding to go back and pick this one up. So more than anything, I really think people should check this out if they haven't. This is easily, I wouldn't have to think about it for more than a few seconds. This is like a top 10 movie for me. This is my personal favorite Carpenter. Gets better with each rewatch and it never gets boring. Like, you can go back and pick out more aspects of these characters or just more little fun filmmaking things. Like we talked about the Panavision camera on the headlight and the wheel well. There is incredibly creative filmmaking here, bootstrap sentimentality of with no budget, I can make this thing great. And like I said, just pure Carpenter firing on all cylinders. So, best almost horror movie ever made.
Hell yeah. To me, this is an interesting movie worth talking about because I think it is a really pure example of an exploitation movie in a way that I personally respond to. I was thinking about this a lot because I recently rewatched Silent Night, Deadly Night, which will be coming up for next month's bonus episode. Plug, people out there. But part of what I love about that movie is that when you think, what am I going to get with a Christmas exploitation movie? It has everything you could want. There is something so pure about it being so stripped down to those elements that it is So it's able to focus on them and really deliver on those things. And here, in addition to being sort of like a copsploitation movie, I would even say that this is almost a carpsploitation movie, in that it is sort of a stripped down version of a Carpenter movie that still delivers on everything that you want from a Carpenter movie. It has the incredible score. It has the innovative filmmaking. It has those Hawksian archetypes. It has all of these pieces that work together, whether it's from his collaborators or him himself, that establish him as almost his own genre, even though he is elevating the work that he's doing within genre as well. I just think that it's really remarkable that he's able to do that in this fully formed way so out of the gate, right? That it's so his own unique thing that you're able to recognize as a Carpenter movie, and being that sort of streamlined version of it this many years later, that you go back to it and, like you say, his authorial thumbprint is all over these movies. And this is sort of the most extreme example of that to me, where it is the most John Carpenter presents. And on top of that, I do think the performances are really, really spectacular. They're understated in a way that doesn't necessarily click with modern audiences on first watch, I would say. That it is something people expect a little more verbosity, a little more flash, but once you do sort of get to know these characters and you spend these slow moments with them, that they do feel more realized because of that. And I just think that the action is spectacular. The squibs, you gotta love them. There's plenty of violence. There's plenty of sick special practical effects. It's just awesome. It's just fucking awesome. It's a movie worth your time. If you have, as Kron said, started at Halloween and moved forward, I can't encourage you enough to go back and check this one out, because it is something special.
Can I add one thing?
No, sorry, we're shutting this down.
Shit, dude. One thing I wanted to say about the ending is it does feel like a more ending on an up note than Carpenter usually does, right? Like
Yeah.
Our three heroes, they have survived. They are out of danger. They're all okay and accounted for. But at the same time, just Napoleon and Bishop walking up together, it's like you end on that, but literally the next thing would be Bishop goes back to being a cop and Napoleon goes back to being a guy on death row. You know,
right.
It does still have that kind of Carpenter bleakness to it when you just think for a minute what happens after this movie ends.
Right. If they didn't yell cut.
Yep.
I love that too. It's definitely got that grim feeling, undercuts the sweetness in a really great way. And that's why this is an interesting movie worth talking about. Kron, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, dude. This was so much fun, as always. Please tell the people where they can check out your lovely, lovely show that I am a huge fan of.
Oh, wow. Thank you, George. I am 1/3 of the co-host of the 5-Day Rentals podcast. It's me and the two friends I love and can never escape. It's Bones and Laundry Dan. Essentially, the show is we pick a category, something like English class TV movie cart, and then each one of us has to pick a flick that we think meets that criteria. We just ended that run of films. We are also 2 movies into a full Phantasm watch. And let's see, during October, we of course had George on to cover Spawn, along with DK from Nerds, Geeks, and the Kitchen Sink.
A hoot to record, if I say so myself.
What a fun episode. I wish it had gone 3 more hours on the record.
Me too.
No, it's a great time. Always great to have you on, George. We're definitely going to have you back. But yeah, if you want to hear 3 guys who have no business talking about movies, talk about movies, come check out the 5-Day Rentals podcast.
Well, we already know you're into that because you're listening to this show. And if you'll allow me to recommend an episode that I do not appear on, allow me to say that the Rumblefish episode was really delightful and I had a wonderful time, and it's a really solid movie that even the people who did not connect with it as much as I did, like a certain Kron Howard, had a lot of really interesting and insightful things to say about why that was the case. So I highly encourage people to check out that episode if you're looking for a place to start that doesn't involve hearing more of my voice.
You like the Motorcycle Boy?
Yeah, dude, you know I love the Motorcycle Boy.
Dude, he's kind of lame though, don't you think?
That's what I like about him, is that he's lame.
See, that's what Bones and Dan said, but the dude's just lame.
I'm lame too, and so I see myself in the Motorcycle Boy this way.
Oh, maybe I hate the mirror that I'm looking at when I watch Rumblefish.
It's all coming together. Put that on your red string wall.
Shit.
Yeah, as far as my plugs, I'll just say, hey, Plutember is coming up. But things are changing a little bit this year in that I have had enough, and I am forcing Reegs and JP to watch movies that I have chosen. I said, there are enough movies that are taking too long to get chosen, or I think will never get chosen unless I force them to be. And so that is why things like Silent Night, Deadly Night are being chosen, and Constantine will be talked about as well, especially because I thought we might talk about Constantine instead of Spawn on 5-day rentals, and so I kind of got myself all juiced up to talk about Constantine, and then Bones was like, no, we're going to talk about Spawn, and of course DK, also a huge Spawn fan, was like, oh great, that's an awesome idea. I hadn't seen Spawn yet. I didn't know what I was in for when I said, oh sure, that sounds fun.
There are so many movies we could have watched besides Spawn.
I agree. And one of them was Constantine. And so instead, we're going to be talking about that here, and also possibly the movie Old. Although I asked JP if he would be okay covering that before somebody picked The Happening. So that might change, because I don't know if I want to do 2 M. Night movies that back to back, but maybe because I really like M. Night movies. So maybe I'll be happy to talk about that one too.
Yeah, and it's crazy that those people get so old so quick.
It is fucking crazy.
It's wild, dude. It's an insane premise.
It really is, and I love him for it. Yeah, so hey, it sounds like actually probably Old will happen. I think you just convinced me.
Hell yeah, dude. Why are they getting so old so quick?
But yeah, so look forward to some really fun stuff. The Silent Night, Deadly Night episode will probably be behind the paywall, because just the way that the release schedule works out. So that's going on. I think we are going to make the listener drive numbers. Sorry to have this super long plug section here, but yeah, if you are interested in checking out the live stream on December 22nd, it probably will be going the full 24 hours. So check in starting at 10 a.m. We're going to have all kinds of fun games, guests, giveaways, the 3 Gs, and then a 4th G for George. That's me. I'll be there too. So yeah, tune in, lots of good stuff. Tell a friend just to make sure that we hit those numbers, and that's it. Thanks, everyone. Bye.